8. My great-grandmother's house. 900 Popter loves their grandparents but hates their house. The house has been in their family for over a century, and something has always felt off about it. The rooms would always feel cold despite the air being off, and visitors often reported feeling like they were being watched. For about a month, this user and their parents were living in the house. It was during this time that an event happened that terrified them. One night, they woke for no particular reason and went to the bathroom. Suddenly, the door shut and locked behind them. The lock on the door was broken, so it shouldn't have been able to lock, let alone close, on its own. Then, the light in the bathroom went out. They had always been interested in ghost hunting and had a ghost hunting app on their phone. They'd used it in the past but assumed it didn't work. The app was supposed to tell its user whatever the ghost was saying. As they opened the app, they felt something, or someone, breathing down their neck. A few seconds later, the door unlocked and the radar read one word: run. They ran back to hide and hid under the covers until they fell asleep. The next night, they woke again and went into the kitchen for a snack. It was there that they saw a dark figure pick something up from the pantry, turn to them, and then disappear. They tried to return to their room, but the living room door slammed shut as they walked toward it. Again, they felt someone breathing down their neck. They kept pulling at their door until it finally opened. Back in their room, hiding under the covers, they couldn't sleep because they kept hearing footsteps on the porch. The next night they decided to try sleeping in the den. Their phone was left open to the ghost hunting app when it picked up a signal. It read Quentin, their great-grandfather's name. That was the last activity the user experienced before they moved out. 9. There's something terrorizing my family. About 2 weeks ago, twin_fish93's little sister began hearing voices. She said it's a deep and masculine voice that calls to her at night in her room, telling her to come outside. It comes from outside in the middle of their yard. One day, their parents went out and the Reddit user, their 2 little sisters, and their friends stayed home alone. That night, they saw something moving in the small patch of trees in their backyard. Telling the younger girls to stay inside, they went to investigate but found nothing. On their way back inside, something threw them over 5 feet into the air. They scrambled to their feet and ran inside, losing a shoe in the process. After cowering inside for a few minutes, they realized they needed that shoe for work the next day, so they ventured back outdoors. This time they came prepared, bringing their dog with them for protection, but he refused to follow them into the backyard. As quickly as they could, they grabbed their shoe and ran back inside. Finally, back indoors, they asked the elder of their sisters to look at their back because it felt like it was burning. She pulled up their shirt and screamed. There were several long scratches running down the user's back. The 4 then went out to the front porch while the youngest went back inside to retrieve something, but came back a few seconds later saying someone was looking into their back window. The only problem was that, in order for her to have seen someone in the window, that person would have had to have been over 7 feet tall. Now all thoroughly freaked out, they decide to remain on the porch until one of their parents came home. After a few minutes passed, they heard heavy footsteps running toward the front yard from the side of the house where the driveway extends. Gravel flew as though it was being kicked up, but nothing was there. They went back inside until their mother got home. She blessed the area where the Reddit user was attacked and their sister's body and spirit. Whatever the thing was, it didn't appear to be able to get inside the house. The user and their sisters still believe it's hanging around the house to this day. 10. The Boy and the Man. I grew up in an older home in Florida. I have 2 brothers and since I was the only girl, I got to have my own room on the 2nd floor, a room that I would end up fearing at night. We lived in this house until we moved when I was 17. I don't remember anything strange happening until I was around 15-16. Just the normal, mom asking us kids where we put a glass or a book. Small things that none of us touched. In hindsight, that was probably either the man or the boy. I came home late one night from a football game at my high school. It was around 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. My younger brother had a friend over and they liked to play pranks on me. When I poked my head in to say hello, I made sure I asked if they wouldn't mess with me that night since I had to get up early for a soccer game. They both agreed and wished me a good night. The way my room was set up at the time was the actual main part of the room had my TV, dresser, a couch and coffee table that I would use for my friends staying over or when I was reading. My bed was in a little alcove that used to be a small porch so that my bed was flush with the windows that looked to the backyard. I put my bag on the couch and walked over to the bed to go to sleep. It was the middle of the night when someone knocking on the wooden bed frame woke me up. I thought it was my brother and his friend who were just going to be annoying and run out of the room giggling. I flipped over to yell at them but didn't see my brother. There was a boy about the age of 12 with sandy brown hair that hung to his chin wearing a purple hoodie just smiling at me, like a kid who got caught doing something he shouldn't have been. And I could see right through him to the rest of the room. I watched as he slowly faded away, completely terrified until he was gone. I slept on the couch that night with the TV going in the background, and I moved my bed to the center of the room after that. The next morning I had almost talked myself out of it, thinking it was a dream or had really been the boys. I asked them the next morning if they had knocked on my bed but both were sound asleep. My mom had overheard me and said she had seen the boy too. Since that night we started to notice more strange things, but I am positive it wasn't the boy. There was a mean man that I could feel at night in my room. We would hear footsteps walking around upstairs when all of us were in the kitchen. Books would fly from the shelves and glasses would be pulled down and break. Our dogs would stand at the bottom of the stairs that led to the second floor and just growl. One of the most eerie things was the smell of cigarette smoke in the downstairs hallway. No one in our family smoked inside, ever. One of the last things that happened before we moved was my brother waking up to see a tall dark figure standing over me while I was sleeping. The entire family at that point had seen or experienced something. The boy was just a kid who wanted to be known, the man was something else. None of us were sad to drive away from that house for the last time. 11. The house by the cemetery. Marco's love, their best friend Bella, and her little sister and brother went to Bella's grandparents' house to spend the night when they were younger. Although the house was next to a cemetery, no one was too worried. The writer was rather fascinated, but not yet wary. Bella's grandpa helped them set up a tent in the backyard. That night, they were up late watching a movie. When it was over, the user and Bella left the tent and went to sit on the swings in the backyard. Bella began telling stories about the haunted house she used to live in. After a while, something in the cemetery caught the writer's attention. When their eyes adjusted to the dark, they made out a faceless, horned figure looking at them through the darkness. Bella didn't see the figure at first, but when the user directed her attention to it, she freaked out. The pair bolted for the tent, zipping themselves inside. They turned on music to try to help them fall asleep, but it didn't muffle the sounds of a fence rattling like something wanted to climb over and a repeating, terrifying bull-like huff. The next morning, they tried to tell their story to Bella's family. Bella's grandparents were skeptical, but her sister and mother, who had lived with Bella in the haunted house, believed every word. 12. My paranormal experience. When Z's age includes Z was 16 or 17, he had just moved into a new house with his mother and sister. He had the bedroom in the basement. About a month after moving in, he started noticing bizarre things. Hangers would sway as though there was a wind, and he often heard light, unexplainable knocks in the middle of the night. It was creepy enough to make him move all of his belongings to the spare upstairs bedroom. One day, while he played video games in the basement, a white mist shot out from behind their television, up the wall and across the ceiling. He bolted out from the basement and told his mom, who told him it was just his imagination. Over the next few months, he started hearing knocks and seeing objects move again. Slowly, it started getting stronger, then whispers started, then painful screams. Soon, it was happening every night without fail. One night, He was left alone while his mother was away for business and his sister slept at a friend's. It was 1 a.m. and very little was happening, paranormally speaking. He was about to fall asleep when he heard a loud shriek of his name. He slept the rest of the night with the lights on. The next few months passed with only minor incidents, but then things really got crazy. Late one night, he was watching television in his room when his bed started shaking. At first, it was only a small tremor, so he ignored it. Then, he began feeling something pulling at the covers from the foot of his bed. A cold hand grabbed his ankle and tried dragging him. He screamed, and his mom and sister came running. At that point, it was clear something very weird was going on. His mother called the people who sold them the house and told them what happened. The former owners, although offering no reason for the intrusions, had their priest come to bless the house. The occurrences never fully stopped, but they did become much less frequent and intrusive after the blessing. 13. Southern Fright. When I was 16 years old, babysitting was an additional source of income, and I was lucky enough to have many families in my area that needed a babysitter. A lady that babysat for quite often asked me one day if I would mind caring for her sister's baby. She mentioned that her sister had a hard time keeping a babysitter. Well, of course I thought it was due to the child. I didn't mind at all. I quickly accepted the job, meaning more income for myself, and she was a super nice lady. However, her husband was a real jerk. He didn't want to be bothered with the baby at all, and he was always in a mood. For the most part he was away a lot. My first day, she made a point to tell me that the house was quirky, making a lot of strange noises and whatnot. She told me to call her if I had any problems. I thought it was strange but dismissed it as just being because she was nervous to leave her baby with a new sitter. My first week was really uneventful, a few weird noises, but I just dismissed them. One distinctive thing that I remember about the house was that it was always dark. Even on the brightest day, it was always really dark. During the day, you still had to have the lights on, even with the curtains open. The baby, who was only 6 months old, had a cute rainbow nightlight. It was an older one that you manually had to use some force to click on and off. Once it lightened up some in the morning, I would go and turn off the nightlight. Well, morning came and I turned off the nightlight. I went out to the living room to catch up on some homework, and as soon as I got settled the baby started screaming. I rushed into his room. He was hysterical and the nightlight was on. I know for a fact that I turned it off. It wasn't a mistake or something I thought I did. I played it in my mind over and over and over again. I know that I turned that light off. I took the baby and comforted him. I was so disoriented and scared I didn't even try to turn it off again. I thought if something wants it on, it can be on. I didn't tell the mother about the nightlight. Every day, she would come and ask me if everything was okay. And I knew she wasn't just talking about her son. Over the next few weeks, the experiences came more and more often. Lights turning on and off and doors closing by themselves. All of the events finally came to a peak. I was in the kitchen mixing oatmeal for the baby, when from behind something tugged the bottom hem of my shirt, and hard. It was so hard that my shirt tightened around my neck. I turned around and no one was there. I screamed and ran into the living room where the baby stared at me from his high chair like I was crazy. I didn't tell his mother about this either. I don't know why I didn't tell her. Maybe I was scared that she would think I was crazy, or maybe I just didn't want to bother her with it, or maybe I was just scared since I never told anyone. Finally, she and her husband moved out of the house that fall, making their stay only 10 months. I was the only babysitter who managed to be permanent during their time. I never discussed the events that happened there. Later, I did some research on the area. It's incredibly rural, and as southern as you can get. It also has a rich history in Indian tribes. While looking up the house, I discovered that during its construction, evidence of a full Indian burial site had been discovered.